Starting us off is want to introduce our webinar, Managing Food Safety in the Packaging of Foods and Beverages. So according to Model Intelligence, the African packaging market is expected to reach a CAGR of 8.4% during the 2021-2026 period. This has been driven by expanding population of youthful consumers, an increased demand for consumer products, a burgeoning individual incomes, and growing domestic economies, particularly in East and West Africa. Consumers across Africa, they're looking for products that offer value for money and they're attractive. Right now, people are all about sustainability, so they want things that are recyclable and at the same time does not affect the environment. But also, as we are all aware, COVID-19 and the Ukraine-Russia war also had an impact on the price and disrupted the supply chain, especially in Africa. So why did we choose to focus on packaging right during this instance? Packaging, it plays a key role in enabling the food industry to avail safe and nutritious foods to a consumer base in Africa that is increasingly seeking out food products. But there remains a wide disparity on the awareness about the role packaging plays in food safety, food loss, and food waste. Further, there are gaps in the knowledge on the choice of packaging materials and the latest quality assurance technologies and practices to ensure that safe food and beverage products are produced and availed to the consumer. In this webinar, some of the topics we're going to discuss include the importance of packaging and choosing the right packaging material in managing food safety, food loss, and food waste. We're also going to discuss the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the current supply chain disruption on access to affordable, quality, and safe packaging in Africa, the latest packaging technologies and their impact on food safety and quality in Africa's food value chain, the latest packaging integrity, microbiological and other testing techniques and their utilization in the food industry, hygiene and handling of packaging throughout the supply chain to ensure safe food, the regulatory environment and its impact on packaging innovation, and a cleaner, circular economy in Africa. Today, we're going to be joined by two speakers. That is Maureen Ragot. Maureen is a quality assurance expert at Precision Plastics. She'll join us a bit later. Then we have Taurai Roland Chiduza, who is a food safety packaging consultant, joining us right from Zimbabwe. So to start us off is Taurai Chiduza. Taurai, maybe you give us a brief introduction about yourself, what you do, and your journey in the field of the food industry.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It looks like everyone is either from Zimbabwe or from Kenya, so it's safer to say Makati and Jambo and hello. My name is Taurai Chiduza, as Catherine has said earlier. I'm a food and safety management systems consultant, dealing mostly with food manufacturing and the packaging industry itself as well. So it's the systems that we deal with are premised around ISO 22000, 2018, the FSMS standard and BRC GS standards on food safety. So I've worked for Coca-Cola. It's a Coca-Cola Packer, not Coca-Cola itself. Coca-Cola Packer before for about 8 years, and then for SAP Miller in Zimbabwe, it's part of Delta. So I've also worked in the capacity as a systems person and in microbiology, and the same as well with Coca-Cola. And I've also been an auditor for BRC, FSSC, and ISO 22000 and HACCP for the past 8-9 years with Control Union, and this has seen me go around the world visiting different packaging and manufacturing companies. My background in education is I have a diploma in biotechnology, and I also have a certificate in packaging technology. I've helped a number of companies to establish certifications based on ISO 22000 HACCP, BRC GS, whether it's packaging or food, and as well as ISO 22000. So I think in a nutshell, that's me. And my wife has also joined in. I have a wife and my kids as well, and I guess they've joined in as well.
Lovely, lovely hearing that, Shaurani.
Yeah,
You have a vast experience in the food industry, and
yeah.
the right person to tell us that you're talking about packaging, but why exactly is this packaging important? Why is it okay, or is it necessary to choose the right packaging material when managing food safety, food loss, and food
Yes.
waste?
I think the basic thing to start on from would be understanding exactly what is packaging, because a lot of people would want to believe that packaging is what you see as an end product. If you see something packaged like, I don't know if you can see my screen, in the final product like this, yeah. But it's a whole complex process. It's a process of getting to this at the end of the day. It starts off with the design of the bottle, the design of the in relationship to who is going to be using the bottle, where is it going to be used, and how is it going to be used. So this is why it is important to understand exactly what packaging means per se. So it's all about designing the package itself and the labels, and then it's also about ensuring that whatever we're using, like in this current world that we're living in, sustainability and environmental stewardship is one of the biggest issues, which can end up affecting the bottom line of companies, one, and it can also increase the cost of the package and the cost of the finished product at the same time. So all those things have to be considered before we come up with a particular package. And on top of that, we also have to look at how is the product going to be added into the container or into the packaging, because the whole process of containing the product also can be costly. You can have some things that need specific machinery to make sure that you package the product to make it safe. So looking from the design to the consumer, after the consumer is even finished with the product, when it comes to disposal as well, because it comes back to environmental and
Nice. What a lovely introduction. You've made us aware that we might be talking about packaging, but not so many people are aware of what exactly is this packaging. So you
yes,
just made a question, like, can you list some example of the types of packaging? What are some types of packaging materials? Now you've enlightened us about these packaging materials.
Okay, all right. So with packaging, you have it can be categorized into three different categories. You have primary packaging is I hope this client won't kill me if I keep on using them as an example. You have something like this, which is the primary package. This is what we see most of the times. But behind or above that, there's also secondary packaging. Secondary packaging will be there to help you to contain, like this one, to come in units, but they will need to be transported in a consolidated manner. So we'll need maybe a box to put the 12 or 24 units to contain them, so as to utilize and manage the space. But with transportation and logistics, space is a very huge cost. So you would need something that is that will be able to contain as much as possible in a very little space, and ensure that the product is also protected while it's being contained within that secondary packaging against damage, because you'll end up having maybe one box on top of the other. The weight of the box on top of the other one will end up crushing the bottle, and then the containment parameters are also end up getting lost as a result of that. So that's secondary packaging. And then on top of that, you'll have tertiary packaging. So tertiary packaging is what we see when we're moving goods from maybe the factory to the retail shops. So that's where we have your pallets and your shrink wraps, which will contain the bulk now to move it to the point of sale. So in essence, when you're looking at packaging, it's the whole chain that is concerned the person who's making we call them converters, who are making the packaging material, and then the person who's manufacturing the product and packing the product, and then there is the end user who's now consuming the product. But these days, the chain is getting much more complex, because after the consumer and the end user, we also have recyclers who end up taking some of the recyclable material back to recycling, and then comes back into the chain again.
Great, great, great. We have
Okay.
those women who, again, they buy already packaged food products, and then they go and repackage the food product.
Yes. So I just wanted to use this illustration here as an example of what packaging means to different sectors of the industry before we talk about different packages. This is a beer bottle,
Nice.
but it's not a plastic bottle.
Mhm.
It's not a glass bottle, but it's a paper bottle.
Wow,
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
So packaging now, I just want to use this as an example to illustrate the whole concept of packaging. For the people who are with beer understanding your product, it needs to be packed under specific pressures because you have to carbonate it. Beer reacts with light and it will give you an off flavor if it's exposed to light. So if you have a compact structure like this, which is not glass, that can allow light in, chances of having your beer getting spoiled by the reaction between the light and the product are minimized as a result of that. So on the manufacturer side, at least product quality is assured, one, and then two, paper is far much cheaper than glass. Glass tends to break a lot, so you don't have breakages when you have a plastic bottle. So the cost of production goes low. If the cost of production is lower, it's then cascaded to the end user, who is the customer, and the product might come out at a cheaper rate. So for the consumer, most of the times, I think in most countries where people drink beer from glass bottles, the glass bottles are retainable because glass is recyclable. So you need to bring an empty bottle of beer to buy another one, or there's a deposit that is added onto your cost. With this one now, you do not need an extra cost on deposit. So to the consumer ends up winning because there is no cost and there's no what we call it deposit fee for the bottle. So that's how I'm trying to. This is where I'm coming from. So it's the quality, the food safety is maintained. The cost is also maintained. Because end of day, if your products are not being sold, your business is not sustainable. So the cost, if it becomes lower, then the customer will also buy. And then because of the new environmental regulations that are coming in, we are also playing up our part in ensuring this. So for the manufacturer, one of the other things that I also left out is for bottles, when they come back to the filling site, they also need to be washed. The washing is with chemicals, so we don't buy chemicals. It also needs energy to heat up the water. So all those things are now cut. So for the manufacturer, your cost of production goes low. Then the cost to the end user also should be relatively lower.
So the issue of pricing cuts across, right from the manufacturer all the way down to the consumer. If the manufacturer is bearing a lot of cost, then me as the consumer, I'm going to pay the price.
Yes.
That takes me to our next session. Recently, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, which disrupted the entire supply chain, the entire economy. But just when you are recovering, the Russia-Ukraine war also broke out. That's when we realized the importance of these two countries in our economy and specifically in our food industry. What was the impact on the packaging industry?
Yeah, with COVID, one of the biggest things was restrictions to travel, which meant logistics was almost at a standstill. I'll give South Africa as a simple example for, I think, where the biggest impact on COVID happened to the beer, to the alcohol industry. During COVID, to minimize contact, was beer usually brings people together. So to minimize contact, the South African government decided to ban all sales on alcohol. So all sales on alcohol were banned, which meant that there was no like transactions between the bottle manufacturers and the people who manufacture wines and beer and the end users. So it's NAMPAC, which in South Africa who make bottles. So at that point, they wanted to increase the capacity of their plant, but because of the restrictions that had been put in place and business was at its lowest, they decided to shelve the plans for the expansion of the plant. Come post-COVID, now beer demand goes up, wine demand goes up worldwide. So you could not only provide for your internal markets, but you also had to cater for external markets. So with that boom in demand, bottles were not available. And I think for wine bottles up to now, we still have a problem with wine bottles. So what tends to happen in situations like that is the cost goes up. So for manufacturers, for food manufacturers that have got quite a lot of cash at their disposal, then they can buy and attach a lot of their value in the stock of the bottles. But for the smaller players, and here we're looking at Africa, where we're also trying to ensure that the smaller players also get developed at the end of the day. So for the smaller players, I cannot be able to sit on $200,000 worth of bottles in my warehouse, because that's a cost which I cannot afford. So for the bigger guys, yes, that becomes it's easier. If they're buying in bulk, they can take that. But for the smaller players, it becomes a disadvantage. And then for Africa as well, it just happened that during the COVID time, I think we had almost like a perfect storm as well during that particular time. For the plastic industry, in America, there was in Texas, that's where most of their polymers and resins are produced. There was a cold snap, which resulted in a lot of pipes bursting and most of the polymer manufacturing companies stopping production. So America tends to export some of its resins and polymers, but due to that incident which happened in Texas, instead of them being a seller of polymers, they ended up becoming a consumer or a market for polymers, which meant that anything that was coming out of the other big polymer making countries like your Middle East and your China's ended up going to whoever had the highest bidder, who was the highest bidder. So for Africa, most of us, we work on constrained budgets. So if we have a bidding war between ourselves against some of these bigger companies or bigger countries, it's us who end up losing as a result of that. So that also pushed the prices of materials, and for some of the companies, it was out of reach. And again, during COVID, there were a lot of delays in terms of materials coming on, getting received on time. Some companies, I don't know, because it's not well documented, some ended up innovating with what they had at hand to make do, to make sure that they supply their local markets, because most of the materials were not coming on time. So we had to almost like design a new package, and that package is not validated. So let's say I just decide to say where I'm packing, I was packing eggs in a particular tray with PET, which is a bit stronger. I changed to packing eggs into a plastic bag. Plastic bag, it can only take a certain weight. So eggs will end up maybe the weight breaking through, and then your eggs are broken at the end of the day. So just as an example of people, it's not innovation, but it's almost like trying to what can we do to make sure that we survive for this particular period? So things like that also ended up happening. And then lastly, there was an issue with, there was a problem with the shipping industry. At one point, there was misallocation of containers and stuff. And then some shipping companies ended up consolidating loads. I think a good example of an incident that would lead to contamination is there was a ship from Sri Lanka that ended up catching some fire in 2021. And the fire, when the investigation was done, it was noted that it was coming from a leakage in nitrogen. And when they did an inventory of all the goods that were on the ship, most of them were polymers that were being transported to various parts of the world. So imagine this was nitric acid leaking out and into other containers. Just imagine if the problem had not degenerated into a fire, what would have happened with the containers with the polymers when they arrived at points of use? So I don't know how many other incidences like that happened along the way. So possible cross-contamination could also have happened, and most companies do not have the capacity to test packaging material as it comes through. They just use it as is.
Right. I've seen you touch about cost. And is there in any way the COVID-19 affected the quality and safety aspect of the packaging industry? You've touched a bit about cross-contamination during the fire outbreak. Can you tell us more about that? If there were any safety issues or quality issues that resulted as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, on safety, this is why I'd say I earlier hazarded to say it's not well documented in terms of the actual contaminations and safety. But what I've noticed is there were some sort of like compromises that were made to try to make sure that if you were making something, a product or a container which had like LDPE and something else as a combination, because you didn't have one of the other, you end up maybe substituting with something else. So that substitution element becomes an issue. And secondly, whenever there are shortages in any market, there is like a possibility of fraud. So in food safety, one of the biggest issues these days is food fraud. From all the databases that I've looked at, I haven't seen anything pertaining to food fraud arising as a result of the COVID situation. But there can be a lot of substitution, a lot of people selling, misrepresenting whatever they're selling. If you're selling UPET, then they say it's LDPE or something like that.
Great. So as you're still waiting for Maureen, maybe you can tell us about the regulatory environment and its impact on packaging innovations, a cleaner circular economy. You talked about sustainability. That's what people are talking about right now. So can you tell us about the regulatory environment?
Yeah. So in terms of regulations for our continent, the unfortunate thing is most countries do not have anything that specifically speaks directly to the quality and the safety of the food packaging materials. So much of it is guided around FDA requirements and EU regulations. When I did a bit of research, I noticed India, I think outside of those two blocks, is the only country maybe that has got something that has got a proper regulation on packaging. And they've even gone to the extent of clearly defining that if you're packing meat, you have to pack it in a particular way. If you're packing whatever food substance that you're packing, you have to pack it in a particular substrate or package to make sure that the safety and quality and security as well is maintained. So most of our regulations, it's mostly borrowed from EU and FDA. And as a result, what I've noticed, like this is from experience now, a lot of people are not even aware of most of these regulations. So, for instance, I see a lot of companies that end up buying finished products from finished products or raw materials from different countries. In the EU, everything that comes in, I don't know if there's anyone else on the group who has got BRC packaging in their companies. What is called the Declaration of Compliance is a EU regulatory requirement that whenever you're buying or receiving any packaging, you need to have that. What the Declaration of Compliance does is it tells you exactly what material is in that package and the composition of the package itself. And then it also gives you how you should handle the package. And there is what they term limitations for use on that particular document. So limitations for use is, I don't know if you've ever tried to freeze your meat in your bread bag. You find that the bread bag at some point will tear because it cannot, under frozen condition, it cannot function properly. So with limitations of use, they will tell you exactly what your product, your package is capable of doing, so that you don't end up mishandling or misusing the product. So a lot of clients don't even understand that because they haven't had access to those EU regulations. And then on top of that, like I said earlier, testing is a bit difficult to prove contaminants within the packaging substrates or materials that you get. So when it comes to the regulations, you also have what is called REACH, which gives you what are the chemicals or substances that are restricted from use in the packaging industry. So if you have that regulation on REACH, it will tell you if your material contains A, B, C, D, E, that particular chemical or component might end up reacting with your product to the detriment of the product quality or the product safety at the end of the day.
Talking about the relationship between Africa and the European world and the States, you talk about majorly we depend on the FDA and the European Union to set forth regulations. There has been recent talks about PFAS, with the FDA setting limits about it, setting limits on it. The EU is also talking about it. Can you tell us about that? How is that affecting Africa? And do you also have such problems over here? Because you know PFAS are forever chemicals and they can migrate from the packaging material now to the food we eat. To
the product, yeah.
Yeah. Don't you have any regulations here in Africa talking about the limits about this, the PFAS or what is it?
From what I've gone through, I haven't seen anything that is clearly defining on that to say you must not exceed so much or you must not use materials that you've got, something like this. The only thing that we have is, I think, on your pallets, but still it's an important regulation again for pallets on your brominated and fluorinated compounds being used for treatment of pallets for phytosanitary activities. But it's also borrowed again from outside.
Great. I just want you to do me a favor over there. Just check in the QA section. There are some questions over there.
Okay. Which I love that paper packaging.
The QA.
Oh, the one from that I think that one is still intellectual property to Carlsberg breweries. But you can go on the net and then just look at Carlsberg new innovations, and you should be. I think you can, if they are selling it to other parties, then you can get a direction from there.
Okay. Is it the question of kindly discuss about cold process packages e.g. frozen fish, frozen beans.
That's what I did see. Wait.
It's, oh, this person wanted to discuss about cold processed packages, like in frozen fish, frozen beans.
Cold processed packages.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, the packaging and frozen foods.
or generally in frozen foods.
Yes.
Okay, so can I, I just given an introductory remark, so maybe it's going back to the polymers themselves and then understanding the polymer characteristics and then where they work and where they can be applied. So the main question is on what parameters do we look at when we want to choose the right kind of packaging. So its key things is, first we need to understand the packaging materials itself. So for packaging materials and substrates, you can have paper as a substrate for packaging. You can have plastic, you can have tin, you can have which is metal, and you can have glass, and you can have wood, and there are other minor items of materials that can also be used as packaging material. So understanding the characteristics of each and every one of the substrates would also give you an idea in terms of what material am I going to use for frozen processes and what materials am I going to use for heating processes. Earlier on, I had spoken about limitations for use on packaging materials. There are some materials that cannot be used, like you cannot microwave certain paper products, or you cannot microwave certain plastic products. So that is a limitation on use. So if you have something microwavable, then that won't be, it won't qualify to be used as a package. So that's the thing that people will need to understand first. So understand the characteristics of the substrates. If it's plastic, metal, glass, and paper. So from there on, then you also have to understand the characteristics of your own product in terms of susceptibility to microcontamination. Does it need, is it stable under cold, under chilled, under frozen, under chilled, or under ambient conditions? What is the water activity of your material? What is the pH of the material and things like that? So all that ends up, like for some of the materials, if you use, let's say, a metal tin and you put something which has got a very low acid, the acidic nature of the chemical of the product will end up reacting with the tin, which will end up affecting the sensory parameters of the product, the quality of the product, and in some instances, if there is leaching of any heavy material or any material, then there is an issue on food safety as a result of that. So all those things would need to be, you need to understand, and then matter of how the product is going to be used by the consumer or the end user. Is it a once-off use, or it's something that someone would use and leave in half, but still come back to it? Like the way we use cooking oil, is you open the bottle and then you use what you want for that day and you close the lid. But by nature of oil being very unreactive and with low water activity, there's very minimal micro that would grow in oil. So you have the liberty to open and close, but you cannot do that with milk. So it's something as when we're talking about even the frozen products, that I will go to that as well. When you have frozen products, you have to create a package that is commensurate with the usage of the product at the end of the day. So if it's you pack in bulk, there is thawing when someone wants to use the product. If you thaw and refreeze, there is a likelihood of multiplication and survival and sustenance of micro, which will go to unsustainable levels, such that it will end up becoming a safety problem to the end user. So the package itself has to be something that is, if you're packing for a fast food chain, we know they're going to do 100 pieces per day. You can pack in mini bulk. But if you're packing for a family, which is going to be like if you pack in bulk and then but we do it anyway. We buy 3 kgs of chicken and then we thaw and then we this. So it's things like that that we'll need to have to look at when we trying to design a package, because the lifestyle of the end user also determines the size and the quality of the pack that you are going to use. So you have to understand your product characteristics and how it's going to be used, and those substrates. And then coming back to that question, so for products which need temperature control, you have chilled products, that is 0 to 5 degrees, and then you have got frozen products, which are 2 different categories. So when we are freezing, generally, if temperatures are below, it depends on which country you're interpreting freezing definition from, but it's generally -12 and if it's minus, do I say below or above? -12 to -18, something like that. That would be freezing. The nature of freezing the products minimizes your level of micro multiplication, growth, and survival. So those temperatures will have to be maintained at that. So I'll just jump a little bit into the issue of hygiene in the processing industry as well. So as part of hygiene, you'll find that when you're dealing with products like that, even your operating environment where you're packing your products, the temperature has to be kept in an acceptable level, which does not allow for the multiplication and growth of the bacteria in. So let's take fish, for instance, as frozen fish. So that's where we find, like in a poultry plant, you'll find the temperature in the pack house would be maybe -5, 0 to 5, to try to minimize for the growth and multiplication of the microbes. And then from there, we usually pack as individuals into different types of packages, dependent on the right kind of substrate that you have chosen after looking at how your product reacts. And then it goes through maybe a gyro freezer or a freezer, and then it's frozen like that.
Great.
But for frozen products, again, sorry if I can just add, when I was talking, when I was talking about packaging, it's not about just the person who's the manufacturer who's packing. So it means the whole chain has to be sustained as frozen. So your transporter also has to ensure that they have capacity to ensure that the product can be maintained in the frozen state to go where it is supposed to go. The retailer must also have the capacity to maintain that in a frozen state, and the end user as well.
Okay, I think the person is answered. And the key takeaway there is you must understand your product, understand the packaging material, and get how these two interact together. So Torai, I know you weren't prepared for this, but you can at least if you can at least share with us maybe some of the latest packaging integrity, latest packaging technologies, and their impact on food safety and quality. If you know of any.
Yeah, it's one of those occupational hazards that we deal with all the time. Yeah, it's almost like going to war and then say, "Oh, it's my last day." If people start shooting, you just have to react as well. So with new technologies, that are coming online, that's not what I wanted to start off with. Yeah. changes are being pushed by, we have, I don't know if someone has noticed there's a new way of purchasing products that is being tested. Like you go into a supermarket which is not manned by anyone. So you just walk in there, you take whatever you want, and then you go out. It's something, everything else, I think everything will be captured on your smartphone. And then you get billed and the money gets deducted from your account, just like that. You go into a shop, you don't talk to anyone, but you purchase and you go home. A transaction has happened. So it's changes like that now that are pushing for us to come up with new innovations in terms of when we put up packages, the package should be able to go hand in hand with the new requirements that are or the lifestyles that people have adopted. So for instance, one of those things, maybe it's something that reads off your barcodes and then it deducts and it highlights that you've taken something. So your packaging must have some form of a barcoding system which will ensure that the product can be captured. So it's just an example of one of those things. So the changes in technology and our lifestyles is one of those things. Our eating habits as well are also changing. So there is need to make sure that we also move in line with that. And then earlier on, I said there is also an issue with environmental concerns and sustainability. So the changes also have to mirror the concerns that are being highlighted on that particular front. And then one of the with food is there's a lot of fraud that happens in food, where I think one of the simplest ones would be people counterfeiting a product. You can have Coca-Cola, but it would be Coke, C-O-C-A, and then maybe a K-O-L-A, and then people won't see it, but it will be almost like it will be produced and manufactured as Coca-Cola. So security and controls to counterfeiting, again, some of the things that we also have to keep abreast with. So on the environmental side, one of the biggest things that is happening is what are called bioplastics that are coming up. So these are things that are being made from your proteins, from your cellulose. I don't know whether, but I didn't put it here. I have an example of a cardboard box that is being made from grass now. So it's grass. Yeah. So instead of using your wood environmentally, it takes 20 years for wood to grow. Grass, you cut grass today, after 3 days, the grass is back. So the resource becomes easily available than trees. So there is a drive towards cardboard material made of glass because of the lignin factor in the glass, which is a bit more lighter than what is in the wood. You realize that the whole pulping process in production of paperboard uses chemicals. So with glass, you end up using chemicals that are less. So cost again is an improvement, and then pollution issues pertaining to chemical usage is also addressed on things like that. So that's using what is available within around you. And then you now also have what is called active and intelligent packaging. So active package, you have packages that would you would need to add something in the package to make sure that it modifies the atmosphere within that package to enable the shelf life of the product to be extended. So you have quite a number of active package materials that you agents that you could into the product that would end up increasing the shelf life of your product. So just take this as an example. Like for an example, you have got a product that had a low shelf life and you need to export it. Where you were supposed to be exporting using flights we might end up going to fried. Because if you've added these active components into the product, the shelf life becomes longer, so the product can stay on the shelf or in transit longer than what was generally anticipated. I don't know if you can see this list of what I'm terming. This is part of active. Yeah. Okay. So all this becomes part of stuff that you can add into the product, and then that also increases the shelf life of the product. One of it is, I think, the most common thing that is happening with active packaging that a lot of people are aware of is modified atmospheric packaging, where you play around with the levels of carbon dioxide, the level of nitrogen, the level of oxygen in your product, and that will also enhance your shelf life in the long run. So that's one part. And then we also have what is called intelligent packaging. So intelligent packaging is about packages that will be able to at least give detect or give you an understanding on the status of your product, so that you can be able to make a decision on the product. Do we put it on a discount and sell it faster, or do we need to go, if it can be reworked and reprocessed, can we rework it and reprocess it? So what it entails basically is just some markers that are on your package that either change color to show you that your expiry date has been exceeded, or the product is about to expire, or the product is about to get bad. So I think if you can see the screen, there are quite, I think, 2 or 3 of those examples that I've put. The easiest one is, I don't know in Kenya whether you've got Castle Light. Because Castle Light has got, that's one that has got that active package. Like, you can say, okay, if the logo is not blue enough, then it means the temperature of the product is not conducive to, if for people who drink beer at a specified temperature, it won't be conducive for drinking at that particular point.
Let me share a bit of my screen. I think
Okay.
you touched on some of the things that prepared on the packaging technologies. And we find that on these advances, most of them are not cheap. They're not expensive, but as the world progresses, so packaging should also progress, and we can't compromise on food safety. So one of the trends we are seeing are like protective packaging innovations, antimicrobial packaging, controlled release packaging, nanotechnology, and biosensors, which apparently falls under the category of intelligent packages. So in the controlled release packaging, I think you touched a bit on it, where the packaging just releases some antimicrobials, antioxidants at intervals. And apparently, according to Fortune Business Insights, the antimicrobial packaging market is expected to rise at a USD of 17.25 billion by 2029 at a CAGR of 6.52, all the way from 2022 to 2029. Now, in the intelligent packaging section, I know most of us are used to the maps and everything, and all these fall under this intelligent packaging, where here majorly we use indicators and sensors, just like Sarai had said. Those indicators and sensors, there are some which change color. Others check on the time temperature information, they check for freshness, they check for the gas formation. And in these sensors, we even have portable ones and we have fixed ones. The portable ones, they measure the concentration of the chemicals in the food, such as the oxygen, CO2, the pH level, while the fixed sensors now, they are monitoring the temperature, humidity, and the pressure buildup inside the packaging materials. For the biosensors, they can be designed to detect specific pathogens like Salmonella, Listeria, etc. They can also detect allergies and other toxic compounds. Yes. I also have the same picture like Charai had. And you're being told about smart packaging is also another name for intelligent packaging. where the active ingredients that they use there are antioxidants, antimicrobial. They also use scavengers or absorbers. These absorb oxygen because you know oxygen in a food product makes it to go bad very quickly. Another type of technology in intelligent packaging is the use of barcodes and radio frequency. We've all seen barcodes when you go to the supermarket. When you just capture a product and then they're able to tell you the price. But now we have RFID tags. These ones, they don't have to be scanned using the barcodes. They can just be read even when we don't have a scan, and it can tell you a lot about the product, not just about the price, but even the freshness. There's also another technology coming up, that is the use of holograms. We know there is counterfeiting and fraud. So with holograms, the packaging is designed in such a way that it cannot be counterfeited. So it protects the brand name of the company which is manufacturing the product. We also have thermochromic ink. Here the ink changes color. When it's exposed to different temperatures, it changes color. So it's majorly used in the beverage industries and microwavable food products. They can indicate whether the product is hot or cold and whether it needs to be served immediately or not. And here in intelligence packaging, you can also employ the use of nanotechnology, of which nanotechnology majorly acts as a scavenger and moisture inhibitor. It prevents the harmful compounds from migrating from the packaging into the food and vice versa. Yes. So that's all on some of the advances we have on packaging. And I can see Maureen has joined us. I think we'll ask the question later, and to our attendees, kindly type your questions in the Q&A section. Maureen, we've been patient waiting for you. Maybe you can just dive right in, introduce yourself, tell us what you do in your company before we continue the discussion.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's quite an honor to join you this afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm just coming out of another meeting. Thank you for your patience, and I'm sure whatever it is that you'll be able to get in the time remaining will be of much value to us. So my name is Maureen Dragot. I currently work in the plastics industry, and we deal with different plastic containers, all the way from automobiles, containers to food containers, and even to cutleries. And I've also dealt with food containers somewhere before, pharmaceuticals, and many other types of plastics. Yes.
Great. I think you can just dive into your topic, hygiene and handling of packaging throughout the supply chain.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. So we'll move right away to the hygiene, and I'll just share my screen. So hygiene and handling of packaging throughout the supply chain to ensure safe food. I hope we can all see my screen. Please confirm, Catherine. Yes, and sorry?
I can see it over here.
Ah, okay. And I hope I'm audible enough.
Very audible.
Thank you. So when we talk of hygiene and handling of packaging through the supply chain to ensure safe food, we all know that a supply chain starts right from, in the food sector, we call it farm to fork, right from the farm where the food is produced to the fork where the food will be eaten on the table. Now, in this scenario, because the packaging will not be coming from the farm, we'll be sourcing them from the supplier or from the manufacturer. In this case, that is the plastic resins. And I'll begin from the point where we receive the incoming raw materials. And when we talk of hygiene, I'll be referring to ISO TS 22002, Section 4, which deals with the food, the manufacture of food packaging materials. And we all know that PRPs are the prerequisite programs that are put in place. And in this case now, what we're discussing to ensure food safety and hygiene throughout the supply chain. And we all know what a package does. I'm sorry I was not here at the beginning. We all know what are the functions of a product packaging. And one of the main functions of a packaging is protection, to offer protection to the food contents that are packed. So because this is what is going to come into contact with our food, and in this case, we're referring to primary packaging, which comes into direct contact with the food. If it's not handled hygienically, whatever the customer, whatever the manufacturer does, whatever safety precautions they take, for example, if it is milk, they can go ahead and prepare very good quality milk. But if the hygiene standards that are compromised during the packaging production, then it's going to compromise the product that is going to be packed in that packaging, and you're going to end up with unsafe food. So it's all about establishing, implementing, and maintaining the PRPs. These are what will enable us to control safety hazards that could come into contact with the packaging. So I'll go step by step, and as I mentioned, we start with the suppliers. And under the suppliers, we need to ensure that we understand our suppliers well, because when we get quality packaging material, quality raw material will ensure quality packaging material. If you're having an issue with the quality of the packaging, quality of the raw material, there's no way you'll get quality packaging material. Whatever you put in is whatever you get out. So under suppliers, this is where the supplier audits come in. It's good to go and do an audit on the suppliers and ensure that their facility meets the set standards. This means you can be doing all that you can during your injection processes and the manufacturing of the bottles, the jars, the preforms, the glasses, and all that. But if you're a raw material supplier, the conditions are not as hygienic as it should be, already there is a compromise there. So we have to do a risk assessment, or the suppliers need to do a risk assessment and hazard analysis on their end, and also have to have monitoring checks in place. So it means our quality checks in the supply chain starts right from the suppliers who supply us with the raw material. And then I'll move to the raw material receiving. This is now at the premise where, or at the company where now we do the processing. I'll use the bottles as an example. So once we supply the raw materials that are coming to make the bottles, then there's the receiving now point. This is now at the premises. So when we're receiving this raw material, we need to have inspection checks in place. And this starts with, let's say, the security seals. These security seals are very important. They're an important inspection aspect because they'll ensure and assure us that there's no compromise in the material that is in that specific consignment. And normally what happens is most of these raw materials for the plastics, because that is what I've been in mostly, most of the companies source them directly from the manufacturer. So what they do, they'll come in bulk containers, and these containers will come with seals. And it is only the customer, the client, who is now the company that will be using them to make bottles, who will receive and confirm the seal number. So these are very important quality check, whereby the security seals are confirmed and ensure that the numbers are matching. Then we also have things like truck inspections to ensure that the trucks being used or the containers being used, the hygiene is well maintained. There's no compromise. Are they fit enough? Are they enclosed to protect the material from dust and contamination that could come at the port or during transit? Are they, if it is something that is sensitive to moisture, are they guarded against? Are they waterproof? And all that. And then there's now the testing, which is now done once the material is received, depending on the raw material at hand, because we have different types of packaging. We have plastics, we have glasses, we have paper and all that. So there are tests that will normally be done on the raw material. And of course, the obvious tests, which are the appearance, that is the color, the appearance, the smell. we can't taste the raw material for the plastics or the glasses, but you can do that, the physical checks, and then now they're the chemical tests that could be done. And also on the physical checks, it's also good to confirm on the outer packaging to ensure that they're clean enough. Most of them use the jumbo bags or the polythene bags. It's good to ensure that even the outer packaging is good and clean, because this will be a surety that whatever is inside is also not compromised. And then once we've received the material, I'll move to the plant, location, layout, design, and the utilities. This is now the company now that is making the packaging material, and we are looking at a bottle, for example. So the plant location, if the plant where this manufacturing of the packaging material is done should be located in a place that is environmentally clean. It's not good to have a plant located near a dump site or near a company that does or deals with processing of hides and skins, for example, because these are going to compromise in terms of smell, in terms of contamination. It's going to be very susceptible. And then the layout of that plant should be in such a way that it doesn't allow for recontamination, for cross-contamination, and even for contamination from the external environment. So it should be in such a way that the roofs are leak-proof, there's enough ventilation, they're not, the products will not be exposed to direct sunlight and all that. So the design should be in such a way also to ensure smooth flow of materials, and there should be no mix-up of the finished goods and the raw materials. So there should be a smooth flow whereby there's the raw material section is separate, the production section is separate, the finished products too, or the warehouses are separate, and the dispatch is done in a separate section, so that there is order and there's no cross-contamination because of unnecessary movements from one place to the other. Then for the utilities, these are what we use now in the processing. Let's say for the plastic bottles, we know we use water in the process because most of them are molding, injection molding, blow molding, and all that. That is now when I consider the plastics. We have to use water in the processes for one thing or the other. There's the air quality of the environment, and even the ambient air of the environment, and even the compressed air that is in use. These all should be free from contamination, because your material can be good, your machines can be clean, but when your utilities are compromised, you're going to end up with a compromised product. Then the equipment should be in such a design that allows for cleaning and ease of access for maintenance, and even still for the cleaning. So the equipment should also be designed in such a way that they allow for cleaning, for access during maintenance, and there should be no hard to reach areas that could accumulate dirt, because these are the equipment being used to produce the materials. So there should not be loopholes for accumulation of dirt that will end up contaminating the packaging materials that are being produced. And then the storage facilities should also have a good design, so that there are no drainages in the warehouses that could also have a pests, rats, cockroaches, and all that, because these things have a way of getting into the final product. And that's why once or twice you'll hear of cases where somebody gets either an insect or something strange in their bottle of soda or soft drink. And when you look back and do a root cause analysis, you'll find that there's a possibility that this foreign matter could have come from the packaging material and not necessarily from the product that is packaged. And then waste disposal is also an area to check, so that the wastes are segregated well, depending on their classes. They're classified and segregated well, and there's a good way of disposing the waste, so that this waste will not also be a source of contamination to whatever is being manufactured. And then there should be measures to prevent contamination. And when we are taking measures to prevent contamination, we first have to do a hazard analysis. We all know that the classes of hazards, the physical, microbial, chemical hazards, and we have to do a hazard analysis, classify these hazards, and come up with preventive measures to prevent each hazard at the point where it is anticipated. There's also chemical migration. which is also now a requirement to be done so that we see that whatever is being packaged, these packaging products, are they prone to chemical migration, and what can we do about it? There's also food allergen management, whereby in your setup, you need to do an allergen analysis and see if there are any possibilities of having allergens in the organization, within the plant. Because if there are allergens or somebody is handling, let's say, for example, nuts are a common allergen. If you're making bottles and you're having people eating nuts all over the place, there's how these nuts could end up in the packaging material that is being manufactured, and they'll end up to the end consumer. And this is going to cause a problem to those who have that allergy. And then you all have to come up with preventive measures for all these hazards that have been identified. And then there's also cleaning and sanitation. In this same farm or this organization where we are doing the manufacture of the packaging material, there have to be cleaning and sanitation programs. A cleaning and sanitation program will consist of what is to be cleaned or where is to be cleaned, who should do it, how it should be done, the agents and the tools needed, the soap, the water, and when it should be done, the frequency. And then all this should be recorded, and the document should be verified by a person of a high authority, either supervisor or someone. So every organization has to have a cleaning and sanitation program to ensure that the equipment, the plant itself, the warehouse, and everything else that is being used needs to be cleaned and sanitized, because we can take care of everything. But if our equipment and our plant are dirty, we're still going to have chances of contamination. And then there's pest control. We also need to have a pest control program whereby we can, there are those pests we can prevent, either by prevention of access, whereby any openings to the environment, to the outside environment can be secured if there are doors. If there are open drains, they need to be closed up. So there's one, prevention of access, whereby you deny the pests from coming in. And then there's monitoring and detection of now those that could get their way in, because pests are just pests. There's some of them will always find a way. And this is now where we get the bait stations, baiting, and having they can be toxic baits and non-toxic baits. The toxic ones are for the outside environment, and the non-toxic ones are normally for the inside of the premises, within the premises. So there need to be a system in place to monitor and detect any pests. And then eradication, once the pests are detected, what measures are in place to eradicate them? And then under pest control, we also need to take a very keen check on the incoming products, because you can take all these measures, but if your incoming products are compromised, they can also come in with some pests, which will in turn make your plant be infested by pests that didn't come from your premises or around your environment, but came from the incoming raw materials. So these ones also need to be checked very well. And even the outgoing products checks need to be done so that whatever it is that you're sending to your clients who are not going to use the packaging materials to package their products are free from any pest infestation. I hope I'm not too fast. I'm just on to the second last slide concerning the hygiene. Then we have personnel hygiene and facilities. So after doing all these, we know we work with people. And these personnel, we have engineers, we have the technical team, we have the quality team, we have the production team. In most setups, they need to take personal hygiene very seriously, because humans are one of the main carriers of contamination and contaminants in one way or the other. And under personal hygiene, we have hand washing facilities that need to be provided, because hands are, we use hands all the time, we touch surfaces and all that, and the hands are one of the main carriers of viruses, not viruses, okay, viruses and bacteria from one part to the other. So hand washing facilities should be there. There should be provision of warm water. There should be provision of soap. There should be provision of drying for the hands, so that employees can practice hand washing anytime they handle that, anytime they visit the toilets, and anytime they're coming out, maybe they went on a break. There should be toilets provided, and also This toilet should be stocked with hand washing facilities as well as toilet paper and all that. The changing rooms should also be provided. This will aid in avoiding unnecessary or unwanted items in the production area, so that in the changing rooms, that's where we'll have the personal items like handbags, like phones, like whatever it is, handkerchiefs and all that. So the changing rooms help to control this so that you don't have everything being kept everywhere, and they'll always find their way near the machines that they're being used, near the machines being used to make the packaging materials. And the storage facilities, these are not the warehouses. Hygiene should also be maintained. The raw material storage and the finished goods storage that are awaiting dispatch. There should also be designated eating and smoking areas, because when we eat within the production, this food has a way of getting into the products being made. Smoking as well, I've heard of cases where the cigarette, how are they called? The cigarette ends are got inside bottles. So it's good to have designated smoking areas just to avoid contamination that could come from smoke and even from the cigarette ends. And then lastly, the PPEs, these are the personal protective equipment, where we have the hair coverings, we have the dust coats and the overalls, we have gloves where necessary, we have safety boots. This will protect the food and will also protect the products that are being made, and they'll also protect the employees who are wearing them. And then we have something on illnesses and injuries and personal behavior. Any illnesses should be reported, and those that pose a risk to food safety, such employees should not be allowed to resume work in places where they're handling the product. So anyone with a running stomach, anyone with a diarrhea, a stomach ache, these ones, because they have this illness, it's very easy to carry this contamination or this bacteria they're suffering from to the packaging products. So it's good that there's a control of such, whereby the employees are encouraged to report any illnesses and also any injuries. Somebody can be having a cut in their hand, and if this cut is not reported, maybe it is a naked wound or it has a bandage, but the bandage is not conspicuous. We need to have conspicuous colors like blue, so that they are able to be, they're easily spotted, and they're easy to be singled out if they fall or they fall into the product. And then personal behavior, now this comes with how people handle their personal hygiene, just as I mentioned, how they react when they have a cough, they are sneezing and all that. And then there's also something on rework, traceability, labeling, and withdrawal procedures. Any reworks, because in plastics, for example, there's a lot of recycling just to sustain, to maintain a clean environment and also to cut costs. Any reworks should be well documented, well labeled, so that we know that for this particular product, there was some rework that was done. And there should also be traceability procedures in place, so that in case there's an issue with a batch, in case you need to do a recall, in case you need to trace because of a customer complaint, these things, the tracing is easy, because you know on this particular day we use this particular material of this batch number on this machine, this shift, this operator, this production date. Then it becomes very easy to do the traceability and even to do a withdrawal if there need be. And then lastly, on hygiene, there is storage and transport. Our warehouses that we use for the storage of the raw materials and even the finished products need to be clean. And in some cases where the products are temperature sensitive, like for the PET products, that is PET, they're very sensitive to temperature. They will bulge if subjected under high temperatures, some will shrink. So in some cases, there will be need to control the temperature of the warehouse and also the humidity. The raw material quality could also be compromised if the temperatures are too high and if the humidities are too high. The vehicles used to convey the products to the customer also need to be clean, they need to be enclosed, and they need to be secured with seals, so that to avoid any compromise, because a driver can decide to be transporting bottles and then they meet somebody with a luggage of meat or fish, and they decide to give them a lift. And this in turn, maybe the bottles are to be used for packaging of milk. So by the time the bottles are getting to the customer, the bottles are smelling of fish and they're supposed to be used to pack milk. And then there's something on food defense and bioterrorism. whereby there are some sabotage, vandalism could also happen, either on the raw material during transportation or during storage within the premises. Somebody can decide to sneak in a foreign object, maybe on the finished bottles that are ready for dispatch. I've had some such cases in my previous workplaces. And therefore, these places need to be secured because somebody can just decide to sabotage the process and sneak in something funny onto the finished products that are going to be used to package food. So there need to be security and control of movement in the areas of storage. And even now during the transportation to the customers, this needs to be security checks. And even of the employees as they come in, they need to be checked to ensure that nobody is carrying into production anything that could compromise the food safety of the products that are being produced within the plant. Yes, I think that is all, unless there's a question.
There
I
are
hope I was
lots of
not too
questions.
fast. Okay.
But before that, maybe you can tell us some of the latest technologies you're using in testing of the packaging, the advances in the packaging or in the testing of packaging, I mean.
So for the testing techniques, we have several, and they keep on advancing the machines that are used for testing. And for food packaging, one thing that is very critical is the secure seal test. Because you can make your products, but if the seal is not secure, there are going to be leakages, and in one way or the other, the product is going to be exposed and the quality is going to be compromised. So secure seal test, it cuts across all packaging materials, the glasses, the bottles, the paper, the polythenes. There has to be a way, there are different machines designed for different packaging materials. So to ensure that the seals being used are secure. And there's the bottle burst test. This one tests whether the bottles will burst. This especially applies on the carbonated soft drinks because of the CO2. They are prone to bulging and eventually bursting. And sometimes the bottle may not burst to spill out all the contents, but it could burst and have a small crack that is not easy to realize. So with the time, this crack could be a source of contamination because it's now an opening, and it could also lead to contaminating the other products that they're stored together. Because we all know that for the packaging, most of the bottles and the jars, they're transported in dozens to the outlets. They're transported in dozens or half dozens or in trays and shrink wrapped together. So once there's a problem with one bottle bursting or leaking, it's going to contaminate a whole lot. And for example, if you're dealing with oil or juices, there'll always be a leakage. If it is milk, there'll always be smell and worms and molds and all that. But one bad thing with spillages is that they'll result to microbial contamination, because we all know that any food that we eat is also food to microorganisms, and they multiply very fast. So that's why the tests are very important, because anytime there's a spillage or there's an opening, the microorganisms will flourish there a great deal. And then there's the vacuum leak test. This one also tests leakages, especially when capped, because you can cap your bottle with the closures, but the capping was not done well. So there'll be a leak. And whenever these bottles, either they're being transported under long distances, they get that there's no bursting, but it's leaking at the seals because the sealing was not done well. So vacuum leak test is done in a vacuum chamber at a specified time, duration, and pressure. And if the sealing is not sufficient, there'll always be a leakage in between the bottle and the closure. Then there's polarized light test. This one is done to see any foreign material or black specks or metal pieces or any foreign pieces that could be in a product, especially for the opaque ones, because we know in food packaging, we have different colors of bottles. We have the black, the amber, the green, and all that. And the opaque bottles, you may not be able to see any foreign material easily. And maybe this is a piece of metal or a plastic or a piece of wood or even a stone. And the polarized light test helps to see these defects or these foreign materials that cannot be seen with the naked eye. And it uses polarized light to see these defects that cannot be seen with the naked eye. And then we have the torque test. Torque test is done torque is a measure of how firm a closure fits and how easy it is to uncap. So a torque test is necessary because it will show the degree of capping, the tightness of the closure. Because there's a unit, there's always a set standard for the closing and the opening torque. So if the closing torque is below the standard, it means that the cap is not fitting as tightly as it should. And that one would mean there's the risk of spillage of the product because the capping is not as tight. Then we have the drop test. Drop test is done normally at about a height of 1.5 meters. A bottle or a container is filled with the product or with water, and then the bottle is dropped from a height. And this one helps us to see what would happen if that food product, if that packaging container is packed with food inside, and then maybe it's in the outlet, maybe it's a supermarket, and then it drops, how it will behave. Because anytime a bottle drops and then it bursts, this one will not apply to glass, but especially plastics. If it drops, if a product fails the drop test, it means anytime it drops during transit or during the display in the supermarket, there's going to be a spillage. And anytime there's a spillage, there's a compromise in terms of the packaging integrity and even of the products that are around it. Then we have the chemical migration test. This one is done on plastic containers to see if there'll be any reaction of that packaging material with the food or the products that will be packed inside. And then we have a wall thickness test. This one is done to ensure, just to check the distribution of material around the container so that we don't have areas having very little material and others having a lot of material, because this is going to compromise on the stability. And even the areas with very thin walls will normally be weak, and some could even end up leaking. And as I wind up on the tests, we have the top load test or the vertical load resistance test. This one is done to check the maximum load a packaging material can hold before it collapses. So this one is normally done to know how much the stacking height will be, how much somebody can stack, so that we don't end up stacking 10 cartons of cooking oil, and then we have the lower ones leaking. It also helps during automatic filling, especially those who do automatic filling for water and juices and all that. They'll be able to tell the amount of force to use during the capping. And then we have dimensional tests, the height, the diameter, and the threads. The threads are very important because once the threads are not as per the dimensions, we're going to still have leakages, because it is the thread on the bottle and the threads on the closures that are going to bring in complete sealing or complete capping. So once the threads are too big or too small, there's going to be a compromise, and there's going to be a possible leakage of the packaged products. And lastly, we have the physical defects that will also compromise food safety. And we have the flashes. Flashes are the excess unwanted material. We have short molding or short shots, where a bottle is not blown completely and there's a section that is incomplete, especially if it is at the neck of the bottle, is going to bring a leakage when it is capped. Then we have punctures. These are holes. They normally occur around the gate of the bottle, and they always lead to leakages. Then you also have poor gate finish. It may not be having a puncture, but the gate is poorly finished. And because of, in case of any impact or any drop, the material, the product that is packed is going to leak. And then deformed threads, this one I had mentioned in the dimensional test, whereby the threads are what brings about the sealing. So any deformation in the threads is going to compromise the integrity of the seal. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Maureen. Now we have several questions waiting for you and Taurai. Taurai, hope you're in. Taurai? Okay, I'll start from the very first question that was asked. There is someone, Daniel Njuguna, wants you to discuss about flexible packaging in general.
Okay. Do we take all the questions or I handle?
Oh, there is also another one. Kindly advise on labeling. What should be put on the label? That's Victor. He wants you to discuss on labeling.
Okay.
Then we also have Jopri Waringa. Can resins from PET change taste of food and beverages with long shelf life? There are a lot. I guess you should answer those first before you proceed to the next ones.
Okay, can you repeat the last
round? If he can help you, it's
okay. Can you repeat the question on resins from PET, the last question?
It says, can resins from PET change tastes of food and beverages with long shelf life?
Can there be?
Can resins from PET change tastes of food and beverages with long shelf life?
Taste and?
Taste. It's about, can these resins, can they change the taste?
Okay, sour. Yeah, I get it. Products of long shelf life. Sour. Okay. Let me start with the last one. Most plastic resins, if not all, plastics are inert. But there are different kinds of plastics, and they respond differently to different products that are packaged. So anytime you are packaging a food product, you need to know the composition of that food or that product or that beverage, the chemical composition especially, and then check your packaging if the packaging will be able to withstand the chemical composition of the product that you're packaging. So for example, if you're packaging a juice and the juice is maybe has a pH, it's slightly acidic, maybe a pH of, let's say 5 or 6, you have to check a packaging which is resistant to acidity at that particular point. So for the PET bottles, whether they can alter the taste of a product stored for a long period of time or packaged for a long period of time, it all depends on the chemical composition of the product. If PET is able to withstand it, the better. And I've seen PET packaging being used for agrochemicals. I've seen PET being used for all beverages, all soft drinks, carbonated soft drinks, foods, and all that. So as long as it is not something corrosive, as long as it is not something with extreme chemical composition, PET should be able to withstand, especially all the food materials. I've not heard of any cases where PET is not.
So the next question, do you want to answer the one on flexible packaging?
Let me handle labeling info.
Labeling, okay.
Yeah. Oh, flexible packaging, maybe I'll be helped. I can chip in, but maybe I'll chip in after somebody else takes it. Labeling info needs to contain the name of the food, the chemical composition, the name of the company and the address, the capacity, if it is 500 ml, if it is 1 kg, the ingredients need to be included, any allergen information needs to be included. What else am I leaving? I don't know how many are those. What else? I don't know if there are 5 or 6. There are normally 6 or 7 requirements that need to be on the label. I hope you're able to get, he was able to get something from what I've mentioned, although I was too fast.
I guess I was able to
and
get
the intended use, yeah, if it is for cooking, and the storage conditions of that particular product that is packaged.
Right. Just last week, South Africa came up with some strict labeling regulations.
Mhm.
That's going to change everything, including the order in which you list your ingredients.
Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, because normally you should start with the highest, the biggest ingredients as you move to the smaller ones. I think that has been the rule. I'll check.
Okay. The next question. Can you elaborate on Oh, I think you've done this. Microbial test to verify hygiene of packaging. You've done this. Discuss how to supply. Okay. Please share if you have food grade sanitizers, and also discuss how to supply food transported by Uber Eats. Saura is back. So you and Maureen are going to answer some few questions. Maureen was answering a question at asked. Victor asked, can you share if you have food grade sanitizers? And also discuss how to supply food transported by Uber Eats. Manage you have this delivery, online delivery.
Yeah. With Uber Eats, it's I'm actually I want to give an example of one of the things that has been a dilemma for me for the past couple of months, the pizza box. The pizza box, for how long are you supposed to keep your food in your pizza box? Is the pizza box microwavable? Can I keep my pizza in the fridge for 3 or 4 more days and things like that? So that particular part about takeaway food and then how it's packaged and handled at home, I think there's still a huge gray area. But for Uber Eats, what I've noticed, like in South Africa, where the business is a bit big, they have like temperature maintaining bags, where if they get whatever food they get, they put it in that bag, so the temperature of the food is maintained as they move. So on the micro side and safety side, on the micro side, there is a bit of protection. But what is scary now is the security of the food while it's being transported. If the person is malicious, then we might end up poisoning people as a result, because it's open to everyone. So that's where the challenge is. So for Uber Eats, I think with the new packaging technologies that we're talking about, in terms of once they get their bag and then they put in like a locker or a tracker on that bag to indicate whether the food has been, the bag has been opened or not, that will address the security part. And then on the food sanitize, on the food grade sanitizers, I think it's one of those COVID issues that gain problems. When COVID came in, one of the biggest things that came up was we must have sanitizers readily available. So if I had alcohol at home or anything that I thought can sanitize, people ended up just coming up with anything and making it available to the market without proper regulation. So it's a problem that we still see in the food industry, where people are using hand sanitizers, but the status of the hand sanitizer cannot be sort of like vouched for. I don't know whether in your country you guys have got a system for registration of chemicals, and then they get checked and validated for authenticity.
Maybe Maureen can tell us about that.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So that does it also extend to mean that the chemicals, once they are approved, they are tested by a competent laboratory, and then they can be called food grade?
Yes, there are standards, there are tests. Yeah. But again, we know we are in Africa. Goods can always be smuggled. There are also black markets, and standards can always be compromised as well. So having the standards is one thing, the implementation is another thing.
That's the biggest problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if the Uber Eats guy has been answered, but for on micro contamination because of the maintenance of temperature, I'm not really worried about that. But my main concern is on the security of the product, in terms of it being adulterated and then ending up harming the consumer at the end of the day.
Okay. I think Victor also wanted to know, like, at what temperature are these foods supposed to be delivered? If I've ordered chicken, at which temperature did it leave KFC? And by the time it's arriving, how long has it taken? What's the temperature of my food?
Exactly. I think it's with the intelligent packaging. If someone could come up with something along those lines, I think this is where I think the whole gist of this webinar lies in. If we can come up with something that can have like some form of indicator to say the temperature during transit has been maintained to this level, then that would be fine. And then at times we have this guy, maybe my biggest worry, I think Maureen had also highlighted it. There is fish that is also mixed with chicken and mixed with something else. Then we're now putting in allergens in there as well. Someone does not eat fish or is allergic to fish, then that's also another challenge. So I haven't seen their bags. I've looked at some of the bags. They don't have compartments and stuff like that. So if he's taking 4 or 5 orders at the same time and they have different food material, cross-contamination for either on the allergenic nature would be an issue, or again, mixing different kinds of meat also poses a problem as well. So there is need maybe to look into that and then maybe regulate it.
Maybe you can inform us, Taurai. You are the consultant. Do these delivery guys, is there any kind of training that they are offered so that they can know how to safely deliver this food product? And are the consumers aware of this? Because there's a research that was done recently. I can't remember in which country, not in Africa. It showed that most delivery guys and most consumers, they're not aware of the food temperatures. They're not aware this food should arrive at what temperature. Yeah, so maybe you can inform us. Do they conduct training?
On training, I'm not very sure, but in terms of certification processes, this is where I like the BRC standards, because BRC has got a specific standard for people who manufacture packaging material. They've got a specific standard for people who manufacture food, and they've got a specific standard for storage and distribution. So if you'll find people like DHL, because they move a lot of material, would have a certificate on food safety and food hygiene based on that particular BRC standard, because it's looking directly at the potential hazards that might arise from the storage and transportation of the food. So I've never come across an Uber company that has got any BRC storage and distribution sort of like certification in place. But it could be, I think with our continent, one of the biggest problems is there is a lot of stuff that happens around us, and we do not raise these things to the relevant authorities to ensure that they get regulated appropriately.
Oh, just right on that, can you also discuss a bit on flexible packaging? Someone asked a question on that. Okay,
flexible packaging, okay. Yeah. This might run out, so let me, I can see my power thing is back now. So cancel, yeah. But so your flexible packaging is mostly your packaging around your plastics, your the PET, no, sorry, your LDPE, HDPE, polypropylene, and most of it is converted into things like your plastic bags that you generally use. I don't know whether people are still using plastic bags for carriers in the supermarkets. And then for wrapping sweets, you can also have that also becomes part of flexible packaging. So flexible packaging is it's in that mold where you have your how can I put it in a nutshell? Your you can manipulate your package to a particular form or format into which a particular product can fit, if I can put it that way, which is completely different from your PETs. You'll be using that on your rigid packaging.
Okay, Maureen, I think this is for you. Hi, it has no name, the user has no name. Just to understand if you can share your experience on the food safety related test and the danger associated with the packed foods.
Okay, maybe I can first start by adding something on the flexible packaging. Normally, just as my colleague has mentioned, it's especially the polyethylene, the low density polyethylene packaging. And normally what is important here is the microns, that is the thickness of the packaging. If you make it too thin, it will tear in the course of transportation or distribution or in the course of packaging. And therefore it's going to compromise the the quality of the product. And another thing is because we have some products that are sensitive to light, so some of them need to have an aluminum lining. I don't know how they call it, the foil. Is added inside the packaging. That's how they do it, using heat, so that it's now 2 layers or 3 of different materials, but there's an aluminum lining inside or a foil that protects the food from direct sunlight, especially if it is going to pack something like groundnuts that have been fried, because oils are normally reactive when exposed to sunlight because they'll rancidify in one way or the other. Now, when I come to, what was the question? I've forgotten, sorry.
Okay, the question wanted you to share your experience on the food safety related tests and the danger associated with packed foods.
Okay, now, food safety related tests. Anything food safety means hazard analysis. And this brings us to the HACCP or HACCP. That is what food safety entails, and it is in the ISO 22000. So anything, when we talk of, I don't know, the question is a bit wide, but for food safety, we need to look at all the hazards, the chemical hazards, the microbiological hazards, the physical hazards. Of course, now they are adding the allergen hazards, which other ones? I saw like 3 that are coming in. So for food safety, food is too sensitive and contamination can come from all corners. And that's why food safety is key right from the farm to the fork. And the compromise of just one will make the food either unsafe in that it will not be palatable. Maybe you'll find something foreign, a cockroach, a piece of hair, or maybe super bright, or it will cause you illness that maybe could be a simple discomfort or a running stomach, or it could even cost your life, especially for the microbial contamination, where we have the salmonella, we have the coliforms, we have all these pathogenic microorganisms. So my experience on food safety, having worked in a dairy industry for so long, it's a very sensitive issue, and just a simple compromise, maybe somebody just didn't wash their hands, and then they handled a whole tank or a batch of food, is going to compromise that. And imagine now this food is in the market. It was maybe a batch of 1,000 liters, and it has been distributed to a whole province. So the question was my experience on food safety and the tests.
The food safety, let me just take a look at it.
Maybe.
Oh, and danger associated with packed foods.
Okay, now the
okay. Can I help with that?
Yes, yes.
It's with the first thing with a lot of processed food and packaged food is it will only be processed and rendered safe for a particular period of time, as long as it's within the intended package, for starters. So the product then becomes totally unsafe. For instance, Maureen was talking about milk. Once I open the milk bottle or milk container, I'm exposing my milk to the environment, and milk is highly susceptible to microcontamination. So therefore, it becomes contaminated with microbes. Milk absorbs smells and odors very easily. So if I am next to a container that is containing petrol or diesel or any substance that is that is some form of odor, the milk, if it's open, it's most likely to absorb that a particular smell, and then that becomes unappealing to the consumer at the end of the day. So the safety aspect of it is, as long as it's stored, handled in the condition that it is intended to be, because that's what the whole safety, the whole concept of safety is. As long as a product is handled and managed in the manner that it is intended for, then it becomes safe. So, for instance, I'd given an example earlier on about frozen food and thawing and unthawing. It's, if you unthaw, you thaw food, you have to make sure that all of it is used, or else you take it back into the freezer. They are no, you don't have guarantee that the food is still safe as long as you have not used it according to the intended purpose in which it has been created. If you take a package as well and you store it and handle it in a manner where it's not intended for, you put it next to like for products that absorb light, you put it in you find like in a lot of bars where you've got clear bottles of beer, the fridge light is off. It never switches on. Because if it's on, then you have that reaction which gives you that skunky flavor. So it has to be in a dark environment. So the safety is compromised once we don't use according to use. So with processed food, this is the other thing about labeling. Labeling tells you exactly what is in there. And the labels should now tell you exactly how you handle and manage the food to make sure that it remains safe. So if the label does not communicate that, the product, if it were me, I won't even take it, because as far as I'm concerned, if I don't know how to use it and I don't know how to manipulate it, it's potentially unsafe.
Okay. You remember that paper packaging you displayed? The paper packaging you displayed? Geoffrey wants to know where you can get it and if it's safe to use in packaging fermented milk.
Yeah, apparently I think it had it's a milk-based product that I was looking at, so it is safe for milk. And you can give him my email, then I can give him the name of the manufacturer.
Yeah, at the end, before we finish, you'll all provide your contact details because there are a lot of people who want to get in touch with you guys.
Okay.
There is also another question. Is chemical migration a possibility for fast food packaging? Chemical migration, is it a possibility for fast food packaging?
It's, yeah, now this is where selection and choice of your packages become very, very important. I had one thing with, I won't say the name of the corporate because they might sue me later on, but they don't allow solvent-based prints on any of their packages that are going to be used in temperatures that are above, I think, 100 or something like that. So you remember that dilemma of the pizza box that I was talking about? Like we at home, we heat our pizza box, and then much of the outside printing on the pizza box, it's solvent-based inks that are used there. So what happens to the solvents that are in the ink when the temperatures are raised? It's something to think about. So depending on the carrier or the package that the food is put in, there is, as long as it's plastic, there is a likelihood that there is going to be some form of migration. If it's tin, if the product reacts with these, there are some not tin, it's what we call the metal packages. There are some that have got like a soldered with lead inside, but the practice is being sort of like discontinued these days. But if there is that in there, and then it's soldered with lead, the lead might also migrate from the tin itself and get into the product, and we end up getting some form of contamination, and which would be hazardous to the person. So yes, migration is possible, but it all depends on the substrate that we are talking about and how we are manipulating the substrate.
Hello, Maureen, do you have any addition?
Oh yeah, maybe I can add something little on the Uber Eats or the fast foods. One big issue that we're experiencing during when I was working in the dairy sector is that a customer would complain. They bought a bottle of milk, then walked around town and finished all their errands and got home 4 hours later. So this milk is no longer in the fridge or the yogurt or whatever it was, and they've walked around town and done all the window shopping and everything. So for the Uber Eats also, there's the time lapse between when the food was processed, maybe it was microwaved to be warmed, and then they're put inside, then they're put in the Uber, and then they're brought home, and then maybe you'll not eat it immediately, then you'll rewarm it again. So there's there are so many lapses in that system. So for those who like the fast food, they need to have that in place. And then I'm also not sure if the riders have take the food handlers test, which is a requirement. I'm sure those who work at the joints and the kitchens do it, but for the riders, I am not sure. So again, that is a very important area, because maybe somebody could be suffering from a foodborne illness, and then they handle your food, and then you'll eat it, and it goes on and on and on. Yeah, so that is just to answer somebody who was the participant was asking about the package or the Uber Eats. So there's so much into it. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, you're going to tackle also a lot of that in our next webinar next month on food safety culture. Yeah, so be sure to join us then. Any parting shots from you guys?
Just maybe to end off for the packages that we packaging material, when we choose packaging material, generally, I think in Africa, one of the, outside of the big corporates like your Unilevers and stuff, we've got properly established food technologists and food packaging technologists. But in other areas, people tend to just copy, look at a package like in a shop, this looks attractive, we're packing almost a similar product. So can we get the product? So there is need to clearly, like the things that we talked about earlier, understand the substrates, understand your product, the compatibilities and things like that, and make sure that you decide on the right type of packaging. And then when you get whether they are bottles or you've got panels that you receive from your suppliers, demand to have a declaration of compliance on those particular materials, so that you can be able to understand to what extent can you play around with the package that you have been provided with, so that you don't end up packaging your material and then it does not work out in the long run, because the substrate itself is not capable of performing the functions that you assumed that this it will do. So make sure that those declaration of compliance, we must make it a habit that you also read it off as you get one. And then for testing, issues pertaining to, I've seen a lot of people when it comes to especially issues of migration. It's one thing that a lot of our manufacturers don't ask about. but the migration issues need to be, especially on the plastic side, you need to question that and then see that there isn't any of that particular stuff happening to your products at the end of the day. On hygiene, it's the hygiene is not only on the container, but it has to be the environmental hygiene of the plant that you're running. So make it a point, if you don't have any hygienic management systems in place, to make sure that you either do housekeeping and have maybe a 5S system to ensure that the housekeeping is okay. And then this, I think when we talk about testing and monitoring, the easiest indicator for whether your environment is hygienic is conducting what are called environmental monitoring programs to test whether there's bacteria or microbes in your air, on the surfaces, in your drains and things like that. Because if they are there, they'll obviously end up contaminating your product. So it would be a good practice to make sure that you have things like that in place. And then standards, we are saying we want to be able to be economically emancipated at the end of the day. The competition at export level is making sure that you have your things standardized to things that are comparable to the rest of the world that you'll be competing with. So I think gone are the days when people refuse to get certifications and things like that, but it's something that we have to strategically take as a must as we go forward. Yeah, I think that's all from my side.
Where do we reach you at, Taurai?
It's taurai077@gmail.com. That's the email. And then, but I'll send Catherine the details as well.
Okay, Maureen, your parting shot.
It was a wonderful discussion and engagement. Food packaging is very wide. At the end of the day, we may produce very quality food, but if the packaging is a compromise, then the food will end up being compromised. So just as my colleague has said, let's give it our best, look for the certifications, and not only the documentation, but the actual implementation of the same, so that we'll ensure safe foods throughout the supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you. It's actually been a pleasure having you guys. This webinar wouldn't have been possible without your input. And we can actually be having more of this each and every month if our attendees agree to participate, because this cannot happen without speakers. So if you want to be a speaker in our webinars, we'll post the upcoming webinars on our social media, and you can reach me at editor.foodSafety@fwafrica.net. And we can talk more about you speaking in our webinars. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Taurai. Thank you, Maureen. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Taurai. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.